One man is growing old and one man is being told that his land is not his own now. He has no place called home. He must learn to feed and grow and find time to feed his soul. When he learns to be alone, he will find that he is whole. Gonna break free tonight. Gonna take these chains, gonna make it through the night. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for watching and listening, and thank you for watching all the different videos that I've been putting out lately. Appreciate your feedback and appreciate, of course, all of your insightful knowledge. And many of you have been weighing in with really good questions. And I addressed a few of those on radio last week, and I will be addressing some more as we go along. I have special guests upcoming for you. If we thought we rocked the boat before, we're certainly going to continue to rock the boat. And it's going to spur you to contemplate and think further about what it is you believe and why you believe that. So get ready, because I'm not done yet. And tonight we have a wonderful neutral special guest who has come to join us. And I am really honored to have him here, because he kind of winds up a little bit of the history, and he also pulls that forward in real time into the present as to how to maybe pull you all together into one direction to work together. So that's kind of neat. Please welcome special guest, Mark-Emery, Boswell. Mark, nice to have you with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very pleased to have the chance to be with you and get into some interesting discussion.
Well,
that might mean something to somebody. That's, in view of all the CRAP that's floating around out there. So yes, thank you.
Well, it's nice to have you with us. And Mark is the founder technically of the National Action Task Force. And what is the National Action Task Force in a sentence or two for people to understand?
Well, we are a decentralized national group of grassroots Americans that have basically had enough. And we're engaging to push back on evil, to push back on lawlessness, to stand for our God-given rights and make a difference. And it really all starts with education, and there's a lot of different things that we do along those lines. But we're here to support the people in pushing back against lawlessness. We're all for the rule of law.
So actually, what you're doing is you're taking groups, willing people, let's put it that way. You're taking willing patriots and pulling them together to help organize them so that they can act together and stand on things as a unit. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the NATF, we rest on four pillars of our foundational beliefs and activity. And those four are, number one is self-governance in common law. So we need to, there's one thing the American people have lost sight of. We don't know how to self-govern anymore. And so we need to do that. First and foremost, take back our power and authority, because we are the root and cause and purpose of all law. But it's been hijacked by professional agents of the crown, and we're suffering as a result. So self-governance and common law is the first pillar. The second pillar is holding public servants accountable.
Like right? That. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
such as?
Well, I mean, we all know of so many rogue elements that are out there that are overstepping their bounds of authority. And the reason they do that is because the people are ignorant. We don't know where to draw the line. We don't know how to say no. And so that's one important reason that NATF is here, is to show people where to draw the line, how to stand up, and how to push back. So the second pillar is holding public servants accountable. The third pillar is personal independence. We all need to basically escape the matrix or come out of Babylon, or however you want to put it, because they have us locked down as slaves. We need to have personal independence. And we're talking in that regard about growing your own food, having alternate sources of water, shelter, defense, all the prepping issues, but then financial and economic independence, having independence in relation to self-governance, back to that, where we can determine our own legal situations, legal status, and matters along those lines. Forgive me, sometimes I use the term legal when I should be using lawful, but just bear with me on that. It's old habits are hard to break.
I like that. What's the fourth pillar?
The fourth pillar is alliances. We've got so many groups out there doing so many great things, and they're all undermanned and underfunded for the most part. And each of us has some great things that we're doing or that we know we have experience on. We need to share that information. We need to come together and at least share that. And so if we can communicate with each other, if our group is doing something that's working, well, we want to spread that across the country. Or if we've used a particular process and it's bit us hard, in the rear end, well, people need to know that too. Don't do this, right? So we can all be much more effective if we're contributing to each other's success. And so we've created what we call the National Action Alliance, where leaders of groups can come together and, we'll have a powwow once a month and just share information and highlights. And, if one group has a special initiative and they need help, maybe another group can throw some volunteers into the initiative and help out. So we can all, I think, have exponential results if we learn to work together. And so NAA.solutions is for leaders of groups to come together, and we're trying to get that going.
I love that. Now, what is your background that brings you into this position? How did you find your way here?
My background is international business and finance, and that's my primary business. I've got a couple of websites. I do that. I've lived in 2 or 3 different countries around the world. In fact, I live in Panama now, and I've been in Costa Rica. I've lived in France, and I've done business around the world. So my background is international business. However, what got me into this is back in the early 90s, I was working for an insurance company. I made a very nice bonus. And to my surprise, the IRS poked their hand up and says, "Hey, wait a minute, we want a big piece of that." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. No, I don't think so. You didn't work for it. I did." And so I started studying the Internal Revenue Code and started seeing what that was all about in reality, as opposed to what they want us to believe. And so that got me studying the law. And
you mean you weren't willing to give a donation?
I had given plenty of donations previously. So that started me on the path to studying the law. And in those days, I was, I was independent later on from the insurance company and became self-employed. So I had plenty of time, spent a lot of time in the law library for the Supreme Court of state of Colorado and also the university. And so I started talking to people about a few things I had learned, and they were amazed, as to really what the law says versus what they want you to believe it says. And so we started a law club, a study group, learning, what the law actually says, how to use the law in our favor, as opposed to the narrative, which is being used in the courtrooms. And we started having all kinds of fun, just pushing back and checking the reactions of these professionals that didn't know how to deal with us. I used to show up in courtrooms helping friends just for my recreation. I love seeing the DAs or the prosecutors not know what to do. They start getting red-faced and blowing steam out their ears. And, there's nothing more satisfying than that, I don't think.
Well, how did you enter those vessels in dry dock without getting harvested? How did you manage your way through that? What did you stand on?
Oh, well, I stood on the law,
Common law is what you're talking about.
No, the statutory law. We have freedom if they just follow the law, follow the code. The freedom is there. But I went to the point of taking my vehicle out of the state registration system, canceling my driver's license, sending notices to various federal agencies, advising them of my termination of my agreements with them and lack of willingness to continue. And so I basically started pulling out of the system.
Is that why you went to different countries, or was that motivated more by business?
No, that was business and culture, really. Yeah. But at the time, I had a radio show. I was teaching people all of these things. It was called the Citizens Rights Forum. At the time, had a great listenership. In fact, I was up on shortwave radio, and I understood there was a captain of a major naval vessel that was out in the Indian Ocean that would regularly tune into my show on shortwave. And he and the crew were getting a kick out of what I was coming up with. It's just truth, truth that nobody has heard before. And their eyes go, whoa, really? Is that possible?
Well, somehow I don't think it's a mistake that a captain of a vessel is tuning into your show for truth. That sort of fits the narrative for today.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how I got involved. And based on that radio show and my involvement in the courts, yeah, I did get a target on my back. There's no doubt about it. And that was all kinds of fun and frolicking. Ultimately, long story short, I did spend a year in prison. I wrote about that in my book, and I tell people that, in the old days, if you went to jail, that was a black mark, on your character. Oh, he must have done something wrong. Well, these days, it's completely flipped. My attitude is, if you haven't spent any jail time, my question is, well, what the heck are you doing? You're not doing anything.
You don't know the system yet. So is that how it led you to Dave Wynn Miller and moving yourself through that? Or did that happen? You just did your time I'm assuming that had to do with the IRS.
No, it had nothing to do with the IRS, actually. I got them beat hands down. I was traveling on a self-made ID card, which had my true given name. All right. I did not include my family name on that ID card. And that card established what my rights were and everything else. And I was helping a friend who was in jail, and I got the judge on his case to give me unlimited attorney-client visiting privileges in the jail, which was quite an accomplishment in and of itself. A non-attorney, I'm not so-called licensed. I don't have a bar card, and for me for me to get those kind of privileges from the judge, that was something special. So I went down to the jailers and I gave them the judge's order along with my ID card, and they didn't bring it back for a long time. And I knew they were in there talking, well, what are we going to do with this guy? Who is this guy? Where is he from? What's he doing? And anyway, just to try and make a long story short, I knew what was coming. They ended up pulling me over as I left the jail, had a very friendly and fun conversation with the sheriff's deputy who pulled me over. And I got the whole thing recorded for my radio show, basically how to nullify a ticket before the ink on it is even dry. I didn't sign it. I got the sheriff's deputy to sign it for me. That's a long story, but anyway, I had that recording and I played it on my radio show, teaching people, how to take care of themselves. And the bottom line is that just really incensed, the status quo. And so they started coming after me at that point for criminal impersonation, for impersonating myself, for using my own given name. It's a joke to this day. It's like, oh my gosh, look out, folks. Here comes Mark walking down the street. Put the children in the house. He's likely to impersonate himself in public again.
That's that. It wouldn't be funny, except for it's so absurd, and the degree to which it's now gone to is just so ridiculous. But people can see it. In what year was this? When was this? So we can establish a
Oh, this,
timeline.
yeah, this was probably around 92 or 93.
Okay. Yeah. So you got yourself out of that. You did your time, or you got yourself out of that.
Well, interestingly enough, I went through trial for criminally impersonating myself. And in my mind, I won the first trial. Actually, I got a hung jury. You can't really call that a victory, but I got a hung jury. And I thought to myself, I mean, they brought out at least 15 or 20 witnesses just trying to smear me as the worst guy since John Bundy. And I just completely destroyed each one of their witnesses one by one, and got a hung jury. And I figured there's no way they're going to do this again. This is just too much, too expensive. But they really want me. So long story short, they tried me again. They withheld my exculpatory evidence, made court orders that I couldn't bring up certain things while the prosecution could. And they essentially just tied my hands behind my back and tarred and feathered me and sent me away. So that's pretty much how that all worked out. And that's what happens when you're dealing with agents from the crown. You know, there's no law and order. If there was rule of law, you know, there'd be no problem with any of the things we're doing.
That's right. And so you believe fundamentally that people would cooperate with one another if they had that understanding of freedom? I mean, you're talking about having an alliance now of people's rights and basically bringing what you just said forward. And I'm sure you're continuing to help people understand. But nowadays, you probably have more people that understand. So
Yeah,
you're trying to put that knowledge together as a grassroots movement or as a shared knowledge movement.
absolutely. I mean, I know a few things, probably more than a lot of people, but you know, still, it's one shot glass in the bucket. So there's a lot of people out there doing great things that can teach me an awful lot, and we can all teach each other. You know, shared cumulative experience. You know, each of us only has one lifetime, and we can only learn so much in that lifetime. But when we've got 50,000 people out there learning through their own experience, you know, think what we can do if we can leverage that.
Right. Absolutely. Now, this begs the question, your name has a hyphen and a colon in it. How did that come about?
Well, I had spent some time with David Wynn Miller in the early 90s, around that same time. And I went down for one of his seminars down in Florida. In fact, was really enjoying myself. I had a new RV motorhome, and so we tooled on down there and spent some time with David. And so I've learned a fair amount in terms of, you know, the present tense.
The quantum grammar and all
Yeah,
the venue of quantum
yeah,
grammar.
yeah. And I started writing trusts in that myself. And it was just, for me, it was just a little too laborious. And I didn't see people catching on to that very much. So I didn't see it as being very practical. So I just didn't take it. I didn't take it as far as maybe I would have liked to.
Now, were
So
you aware of Bull Colin Russell hyphen J Colin Gould as his partner at the time?
at the time, I was not, no, but I have learned of him since, you know, in recent years.
Okay. And so you kept your hyphenated name. Why?
Just as an expression of who I am, you know, I am a noun. Since I went to jail for using my own name, I thought maybe I need a little refinement on this issue. I don't know.
Well, interesting, because I'm about to get into yet another interview that speaks to the previous ones I put out here, and that's with Sergeant William Cotel. And some of that interview will be based on the fact that he's trying to file in some serious documents and they won't accept them. And so we know, based on the research and the things that I've been sharing, that to have a live life claim, you have the right then to state a claim. Without that, you don't have a right to state a claim based on the way the system is today. Maybe Prior to 1999, that was a little different, but today that seems to be the fact and the new rule of law, if you will. But we're going to get into that on another show. Now you've run into some of that too. So let's talk about how you navigated around the inability to state a claim and who's in charge of that.
We were trying, we at NATF, we've got some paralegals and legal researchers working with us. And we've come to provide some aid and support to some business people who were fighting the business shutdowns during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
And one particular case is fascinating in and of itself. And we've had several minor successes along the road on that, but we were experiencing some serious hardships for lack of due process being denied this lady. And so we started filing complaints, and the chief justice of the district would not, they accepted our complaint, but they would not act on it. I mean, it was open and shut, black and white. I mean, there was nothing to determine, no gray areas, nothing. I mean, this judge was just wrong. And she refused to do anything about that. So we took it up to the federal court to file a complaint with the federal court, which is the next step in the process. And the federal court clerk initially would not accept our complaint. Okay, we're filing a complaint against this judge, and of course it's a brotherhood, and they all protect themselves. We all know that. But we do things in many instances to put them in a corner and to get it on record. Okay. You know, if you're going to be a treasonous, seditious insurrectionist, all right, let's just get it on record.
Good for you. Yeah, that's a really important point for people to really realize that you don't always win a case, just the case goes away, but it's on record.
And I believe there will be a day of atonement. Okay. There will be a day of judgment on these people. From one source or another. And I think being on the record is important. And when we can do that, now we've got something really to stand on to go out to the court of public opinion. All right. And if some people, want to, they can go to their legislatures, they can go make a big noise. So anyway, so she refused to accept it. And our legal team immediately went into action to research what her duties were as a clerk of court, and what the consequences may be if she fails her duties. Okay. And this is a very important aspect of what NATF is doing, keeping public servants honest and doing their duty, because they're so used to getting away with murder, they just do whatever they want.
That's right. And you don't really hear about that part, but you see, the point I think that is really important that you're bringing up here is that you are talking about the clerk of court. You're not talking about the judge. The judge is part of it, but you're talking about the clerk of court. So please carry on, continue.
She's the paymaster for the whole operation. If you understand how these bonds work and everything else, we're trying to do some research and follow the money trail on how these court cases are bonded and monetized in the markets. If anybody has any insights and research on that, we'd love to hear you. We've got a fair amount of information, but we haven't gotten over the top on that.
Well, if you stay tuned, I think we have a fellow coming up that can at least add to that equation later at the end of or early next week, rather.
Beautiful. Okay. So anyway, once she realized there were consequences to her failing in her duties, she figured out she'd better do what she needs to do, and she took our documentation in. So
she filed it, and then what happened?
Well, and then they did what they always do: is they refused to act on it, or without any review or without any cause. Just denied the claim or denied the appeal, which is typical. No cause, no reason, no evaluation or analysis, no basis in law. It's just, nope. It's like, he's one of ours. You can't touch him,
Yeah. So you've run into this. You've been through it yourself. You've been on the inside of the system and out again. You've spoken to Dave Windmiller. What did you take away from him at the time? Like, given what you're talking about and what you know, as you recall now, what did you learn from that experience that maybe was helpful today?
Well, one thing that I think is very important for people to understand is that I had to stretch my mental capabilities, right? I had to stretch the expanse of my thinking, what I was willing to observe and take in. It was certainly beyond my comfort zone. And that's a major point right there, that people need to get to that point where they're willing to stretch outside their comfort zone,
I think that's a really fair point. That's true, because people will stop and they continue what I'll refer to all this that we're talking about as hypnosis almost. And they're just, it's easier to go back to what's familiar than to stand for what's correct.
Yeah, that's the easy road, but just like the Bible says, the road to perdition is wide and easy. And the same thing holds true with, where we're at in this nation right now. People have the attitude, well, I don't want to raise my head up and rock the boat and become a target and, have problems. And my reaction is, hey, buddy, wake up. You already have problems, right? Your ship is sinking. You're going down the tubes. Grab a bucket and start bailing. Do something.
Yeah. So what kinds of groups have you pulled together in your organization? Do you work with specific groups or just individuals that might represent in a group?
Well, we like to work with both, really. Typically, we ask that the leaders of the groups register with the National Action Alliance, and then they can represent their group and what their group is doing. And so we want to benefit and share and collaborate with, the full core of the group itself.
Well, that's really interesting, because we're at this crossroads right now. I put that out to the quantum claimants because they're looking for, how their performances will be taken in and help to turn the tide on the system. And they're filing lots of amicuses and things right now. So maybe even quantum claimants could come and join your grouping and lend their perspective or their knowledge into that pool as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and then
we love that.
I have the people, of course, from the Oregon Jural Assembly, and they're hot on the trail for reform and not the Anna von Rice reform. I'm talking about a whole nother, more of what you're talking about, really.
Yeah. I've been in touch. We've had some meetings together with the Oregon people and Ron and that group. So they're doing some great things. God bless them. I just wish more people would follow their lead and take their example and make things happen in their own local area.
And some of those people are quantum claimants too. So where people think it's just in its section over there somewhere, that's not true. They're behind some of the movement of, it's just like you said, it's expanding your thinking. And I think that's a brilliant way to say it, because everything that you're talking about, it's like a hierarchy of understanding, really. You have the average layperson that doesn't even know any of this is going on, but they have a funny feeling, like something's not quite right, but they don't know what. Then you have the people that are more aware, and they have a sense of what's going on by firsthand experience, and the alarm bells are going off. And then you have the people that got tied up in the system and can't find a way out, or their children are caught in the system somehow, and they're really upside down. And then you have the people that have broken through the system and see a path out successfully. And how do they apply it against this big giant monster? How do they do that?
Well, that's one point I really want to stress with people. We hear from people every day. Oh, Mark, I need help. I got this problem. They're doing this to my son. They're doing this to me. I got, blah, 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 all these problems. And I've been preaching for years. Empower yourself with the knowledge to avoid these problems in the beginning. It's much easier. It's much easier to deal with a barn fire if you got, all the animals out first, right? You had the premonition, and you were thinking ahead, and you had the fire extinguishers pre-positioned. When the fire started, you had a chance to put it out. But you don't think about fire extinguishers after the barn's already burning.
Yeah, it's so true. That is a great
So
point. So what is your
I
next
just
step?
I just encourage people to empower yourself with knowledge now, because you're going to need it. The hammer's coming down on this country and the people. 87,000 new IRS agents, not just new agents, agents with guns. And it just goes on and on. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I could listen to this all day and have this commentary for many hours. Trust me, I live in this lane. So tell me, where are you taking your organization next? What is it you want the people to know?
Well, we're in the process of trying to organize local groups, okay, to get people to get a few people together or join up with some other group. That's another important point. So many of these groups, the leader has their ego involved, and their group is their turf, and they just don't want to give that turf to anybody else come in and steal the limelight. Well, that's ridiculous. That's counterproductive, and that's gonna be the death of your group. Okay, there's too many like that. We don't care if it's the NATF banner or whose banner is flying. We need people to come together with the right knowledge, the right initiative, the right gumption, and the right support. So we're trying to help people set up their own common law grand juries, just like the group in Oregon is doing. National Liberty Alliance has made a number of attempts along those lines. Bob Schultz with what is it? We the People. So we're trying to do that, get these local groups organized. We're trying to build ourselves up. I mean, we're operating on fumes. We don't have a budget, and so we're trying to do a little bit of fundraising so that we can actually hire a full-time professional staff, so that there's always someone there to help in given areas. Public relations, so we can take these issues out to the court of public opinion. We want to do video exposés on corrupt officials, and also the good ones, not just the corrupt ones. We want to highlight the good ones.
That's really important. Start pointing out the great people in this country and put band around them, because that's where this change of thinking, I think, could take place. We're always looking for the bad. Why aren't we looking for the good?
Yeah, it's a yin and yang thing here.
So tell us what the name of your book is.
Well, I've got 3 books published. The first one I did is probably the most substantive. I forget how many pages it is. I think it's at least a couple hundred, or if not 300. But it's called One Free Man's War.
Great.
Which is basically my story about how I stood up against the system and what went down, how it happened, the successes I've had, the failures I had, so that people can learn about that. There's a lot to learn. It's just jam-packed with historical facts, law, spiritualism, and how that played a role in me overcoming, what I had to overcome. I've just got so many great stories I wanted to tell. I figured before I pass from this earth, I want to leave those stories behind so people can learn from them. And then I published a couple other books, How I Beat Satan and the IRS, as Mark Twain says, but then I repeat myself.
Or impersonate yourself.
And that's just a little pamphlet to give an idea of the fraud of the IRS. That's a quick read. And then I wrote a book, The Ultimate PT, permanent traveler, previous taxpayer, stuff like that.
All the things that PT can apply to.
Yeah, and then my international travels, my international experiences, and how I use the PT concept to kind of, fall off the radar or confuse people. And, I've had a lot of fun doing this. It's just not all a grind.
You're a bit of a rebel.
Yeah,
but you're
I
very
love
balanced.
it.
You're very even in your rebellion. So it's interesting. I'll look forward to reading your books, and I hope we can continue this conversation because I like to keep up on what you're bringing in and people you're pulling together. I mean, I really do think with your background a little bit on with the Dave Wynn Miller thing and where the quantum movement is now, there is such a knowledge base you have of certain things, and then pulling that together with some of the action items, you might even find a hand in that for you to do certain things as
Oh
well.
yeah,
So maybe there's a synergy that could be explored.
absolutely. In fact, I just put out yesterday an appeal by email. Help wanted, volunteers needed. Not a whole lot, couple hours a week doing this, doing that, and we could accomplish a lot. Yeah.
Love it. Well, I want to say thank you for coming to Making Life Brighter. And I always ask people on radio anyway, what makes your life brighter?
What makes my life brighter? The fact that I have the God power within me and nothing can overcome that. Period.
I don't know what to say to that. That's beautiful. Makes my heart glow like, whoa, okay. That's fantastic. So nice to meet you, Mark-Emery Boswell. Thank you for being here. And the Alliance is National Action Task Force, and you said the Action Alliance. So what's the difference?
Yeah, the National Action Task Force is broad scope. That's the 4 pillars we talked about. Okay. That's natf.world. Just put natf.world. We've got a robust website with a lot of training material, a lot of learning material, a lot of good stuff there for people to benefit from and come back to. And then the National Action Alliance is naa.solutions. And that's where we want to bring people together, groups together, and start collaborating.
Well, there we have it, everyone. You are listening to a groundbreaking individual that's walking his talk and walking his writing and sure of who he is. And that's the most important part. He's sure of who he is. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here. Let's touch base again. Let's get an update on what you're doing, because I'm sure these people will want to follow along. And we have people from all sides of the fence really that are watching and listening. So thank you. Thank you for taking time with us tonight here at Making Life Brighter.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, and God bless us all.
All right. Well, go jolly, everybody. Go out and make someone else's life brighter. And you can reach out to Mark through his organization, his websites that he mentioned. And we have more coming for you, so stay tuned. Speaking to this topic and much of this conversation today, I have a very important interview upcoming with Sergeant Cotel that I mentioned in the series. And that's going to speak to this very issue. So, all right, everybody, we'll see you very soon. Stay tuned.
One man is growing old and one man is being told that his land is not his own now. He has no place called home. He must learn to be and grow and find time to feed his soul.